Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah, get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, bet you this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, and this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
Ooh, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host of the hardest part of the ring, aka Kyle. And boy, howdy, do we got a special one. We have a UK wrestling legend on today. One of my quick favorites in my watch through of Progress Wrestling. But we're here today to talk about Progress Chapter 16. And if you are a new listener, or if you're a frequent listener of the old Apron Bump, but maybe you're not super familiar with Progress, I got you. Just go to apronbump.com, select the episodes tab at the top, and select Progress Wrestling, and that'll bring you to all of my Progress Wrestling reviews that I've done thus far, starting from the beginning, Chapter 1, all the way up to now, where we are at right here, Chapter 16, and geez Louise, is this card stacked. I mean, this is an era where Progress is hitting, just knocking that shit out of the park, you know, with their cricket bats and whatnot, on every show, every chapter. And this one's no different, but like, man, just going through all these chapters, like you start to like get invested in the characters and kind of see people that you know nowadays, whether it's from NXT UK or Japan or wherever. And Chapter 16 is the first card that I looked at and was like, whoof, man, I am pumped to watch that. And after watching it, it met my expectations for sure. I mean, there is it's main evented by a triple threat match for the Progress World Championship. You got Jimmy Havoc defending against Dave Mastiff and Rampage Brown, who earned those slots to be number one contenders at the last chapter. So now you got Jimmy Havoc facing these two big bastards, and he's got to find a way to escape with his title belt. Yes, his belt. They finally get rid of the fucking staff on this chapter. So that alone makes it monumental. But outside of that, we got Paul Robinson versus Will Ospreay for the Thunder Bastard title. We got a brutal street fight between El Ligero and Michael Gilbert, which is both brutal and hilarious at some points, but we get into it. We get a semifinal match for the Natural Progression series. But the story of this chapter, let's be honest, the main takeaway, in my eyes, what was the main event, was a career versus career match. Stixx versus my guest on this episode, RJ Singh. Who, man, this is some good shit. And if you listen to my last episode, my last Progress episode, Chapter 15, we talked about the promo segment that RJ Singh and Stixx had on that show. It was one of these things where when I turned Chapter 15 on, I had no idea that RJ Singh and Stixx were associated with each other at all. But lo and behold, they're real life best friends. They came up together, and we talk about a lot of this in the episode. But just in one segment, they tied me in. They tied the whole crowd in to a point where right here at chapter 16, this career versus career match, you can just feel how monumental it is, both from the crazy entrances, which I posted a clip of, the match itself, the aftermath. It's all incredible. And I was so happy to have RJ Singh on here to kind of walk us through what went into the match, what went into the build up to it, the reaction after, kind of how he bounced back and forth in wrestling after this, and his transition into commentary. We talk about a lot in this show, and it was really awesome to get his insight on, stuff that you wouldn't get unless it was from somebody who was there. So loved having RJ on. Great guest. We talk about, obviously, not just his match here, but the entire card. I mean, we talk about how heavy the tag shield championships are, the little broken, the yin and the yang title goofy belts that they have. Apparently they're heavy. Oh, hey, by the way, this is worth the price of admission to this episode here. We finally find out what FSU means. I've been asking people since I started this podcast, and nobody seems to know, but finally has somebody who was behind the curtain to finally let everybody know what FSU means. But yeah, follow RJ at RJ Singh is King on Twitter. I'll put all of his social media in the description below. The dude is still going today. He's looking even more jacked than he was in this chapter. He's still going strong. So does that take away from the career versus career match? I don't know, but no. He's the Ric Flair of the UK. I told him so, which is not a bad thing, or I guess maybe the Leo Rush of the UK, however you want to, or the Terry Funk, whatever one you want to choose. But yeah, let's get right into it, man. Why waste any more time? Progress, chapter 16, with myself and the King, RJ Singh. How have you been, man? How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Just busy as life is these days. Just on my I don't know what you call them in stateside. We have like a half term, so I'm on a break from school at the moment.
Okay.
So it's kind of the week. The school's closed for this week, so
lucky you.
Yeah, we get them we get them 7 to 8 every 7 to 8 weeks. We have like a half term that just splits up the term, and then obviously on to the next holiday will be Christmas and stuff. So,
right, yeah. So the teacher stuff isn't just a gimmick.
I'm a head teacher now. So principal to you, of course.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome, man. And you just came back. You just kind of recently came back to the wrestling scene, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't stay away very long, as long as I intended anyway.
Right.
So I took that retirement kind of break, whatever you want to call it, back in 2014.
Right.
So kind of like had that break in 2014. But by 2015, like a promoter had convinced me to go do like some manager work.
Right.
So I was like working a manager in 2015 for a company. And then literally must have been that same year, Progress then contacted me again and were like, we'd really love to have you on commentary. And it might have been about chapter 20. I couldn't tell off the top of my head. I think it was about chapter 20. I then went into comms, and I was on comms with them for then a good 2-3 years or something like that. Back with Progress, and it was kind of in the second half of 2016. I stepped back in the ring. So
yeah, because I looked it up because I was curious because, spoiler alert, this is your last match for a while, allegedly, right? And I guess you kind of popped in and out for a few years, right?
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of Progress, you were there for what, like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I was there from their second show.
Right.
Like show number 2. I was supposed to be on show number 1.
Right.
But I couldn't for personal reasons. It was so. I mean, and that was kind of a lot of what feeds into this this whole story. Like what was happening in real life parallel to all this was my wife and I were trying for a baby for years. So all the way back in we started trying back in 2011, and we'd had our first had our first miscarriage and whatnot. Just the week before the first Progress show.
Oh, really?
So I was billed against Colt Cabana. So I was going to wrestle Colt Cabana on show number 1. And then a week before that happened, my wife went into hospital and everything, so I had to pull out the show. So
of course, yeah.
And end up being replaced, and then so then I didn't actually sort of come into Progress until chapter 2.
Right.
And I'd obviously, from that point on, from sort of was that 2012. So for the 2 years, I was pretty much there. Most chapters. I was there then. So for that bit of time. So I think I'm just trying to think if I had spent more time on comms than I did.
Right. Yeah. I've heard, because it's for context. So I've never seen Progress other than what I've covered in my podcast so far, and I've kind of started from the beginning, and I've worked my way to where we are now, chapter 16. And I've heard that you were on commentary. I wasn't sure how long, but you said you were on commentary for a good amount of time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was there on comms until the end of 2017.
Okay.
I think it was about around that. I can't remember if it was either 2017 or 2018.
Right.
Was when I was there.
Is that something that you enjoyed, commentary?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed doing it. It was good, and I was pretty much working in a 2 or 3 man team. So I was either working with Glenn or I was working with Callum, and occasionally when you get to the big Brixton show, then that was the first time we did a 3 man team.
Okay.
And from then on, we were kind of mixing up a different, when Progress were in London, it was a lot easier for me and Glenn to do it. Because we were both, I live near London, Glenn was in London, so it was easy to do that. But when they were up north in Manchester, it was Callum lived in Scotland, so it was kind of easier for him to come down and there. So we kind of got to mix up, and we had some really, really enjoyed commentary. It was really good. It was really good to kind of watch everything from that perspective,
right?
And see things slightly differently, I guess you could say. It was enjoyable, and I think the only time I didn't enjoy it, there was the one time I didn't enjoy it was I can't remember the chapter because my memory is terrible. And without giving too much spoilers away, it was one of the big Progress title matches. It was probably like the biggest one at that point, and we recorded it. Completely blew our voices out because we were like screaming so much.
That's a good sign. It's a good sign for the show.
I got a message like 3 days later from Progress, and they were like, "We're really sorry. Like the audio failed. The whole file is corrupted.
Wow.
We can't use the audio at all. Like, can you come round to Glenn's one night in the week and we'll re-record the entire show?" And I only say that because it was trying to muster up the same energy. Like obviously, watching it live, because we would record live. All our commentary was live. So trying to muster up that same energy again was really tricky. Like, to be able to go like, "Oh, it's so exciting."
I can't believe it. No, I can believe it because I saw it already.
Exactly. So that was probably the trickiest one we had to do, was trying to re-record that, trying to give the same sort of enthusiasm, even though you were knowing what was coming. So
right.
But apart from that, I had a blast. It was great fun. It was great fun.
Yeah, I mean, that just shows the incredible range that you have. I mean, because you came in, you're kind of comedic at a lot of points, but then in this chapter is super serious, and to each end, I think you nailed both ends of the spectrum. So, big fan of you, because I had not really heard much about you until I kind of started going through these shows, but obviously a quick fan of you, and I think this is some of your best work, at least that I've seen on this chapter.
Thank you.
And I think you said on Twitter that you thought the same, that this was some of your best work here with Stixx.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we kind of didn't have time to get across in Progress, which the only thing, my only regret looking back now was that we had, I wish I'd pushed for kind of starting it a bit earlier, just to give it maybe 3-4 chapters worth of time, because we kind of did it over 2 chapters, which I still think was incredible, that we managed to kind of convey the entire story in just 2 chapters from one segment and then a match. In between, we did actually do a live YouTube. It was like an hour-long live YouTube interview, between the 2 of us, where we kind of carried on the storyline there.
Cool.
We did this, we did this interview. We were both talking about what was going to happen and things like that. So we managed to kind of expand it in that way. but I think to kind of condense the whole story, because if for those fans who were regulars of British wrestling and had, I don't know if you heard of a company called FWA. FWA was kind of like the hot property in the early 2000s.
Okay.
They were the people who brought like AJ Styles over here in like 2004, 2005 when he was on the rise and stuff. So, and me and Stixx, we both trained with FWA and we were wrestling with it, and we had wrestled multiple times, and all the kind of stuff, being the best men at each other's wedding. That is all 100% true. It's funny, we're recording this tonight. Actually, it's Stixx's 40th birthday today.
Oh, really?
Today, yeah, he turned 40 today. I turned 40 back in May, and Stixx turns 40 today. And we were chatting about this last week. So we really are good friends in real life. And it's we'd wrestled each other loads, so we really did have quite a history together. Like on that sort of the British independent circuit when we kind of came up wrestling in the Midlands a lot. So so we kind of had that, and we had to kind of condense that entire history into just that one promo and then into the match as well. But yeah, I think what was good about that match is, like, I think to watch the match back now, it's like the best of every single match we had ever had in all our time up until that point. In the sort of the 11 odd years we'd been wrestling at that point, we kind of put it all together into that match. And that's kind of the story we told. So yeah, it's probably one of those things that I just look back on with real fondness. Yeah. I really do. It's, I think, some of the best stuff I ever did, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, but that element of realism and legitimacy behind it, I think, definitely adds. And you could tell as a viewer that translates through the screen for sure. And we'll get into the details of the match a little bit later. But this, I gotta bring up the entrance, man, because you sent me it on, I guess it's a YouTube link, right? And this is before I watched the show, and I was like, why is he sending me the entrance? Why is that so crucial? Then I watched it. As I was watching the show, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So you like come out to Sing is King, I guess is the title of the song, right? And I hear it, and it's obviously the first time I'm hearing the song, and I'm like, is that fucking Snoop Dogg singing RJ Singh's theme song? It's like, no, maybe it's just a guy that sounds like Snoop Dogg. But then I go to Spotify, and lo and behold, it's on Spotify. It's got tons of views, and it says Snoop Dogg there. So it's like, wow, that was. Now it's been in my head all day. By the way, the sing is like all day, just walking through my house. Yeah. It's incredible. How did you manage to get that to happen?
Well, here's the thing. It's not actually it's not a custom piece of music. It is a piece of music that's written for a film called Sing is King.
Oh yeah, I guess it's kind of an evergreen it's a common last name, so I guess that makes sense.
That's it. It's a 2007 Bollywood movie, which is really wacky. It's such a bizarre. It's like a comedy. And for some bizarre reason, the title of the film is Sing is King, and the king has got two ends. But yeah, so it was, I actually, because I started using the phrase Sing is King when I discovered that film. So I saw that film and it called Sing is King. I was like, that is a cool catchphrase. I'm stealing that. So I kind of took that catchphrase and I was like, right. And then, obviously, I'd be listening to it came out in 2007, but I didn't discover this film till a little bit sort of into 2013. And so I'd been using different music in Progress up until that point. But obviously on the Progress DVDs, they don't show the entrances because of the copyright on music and whatnot, which is why the entrance isn't on the DVD and why it's on YouTube. So when we got to that show, I'd always wanted to, because I was doing the kind of the Bollywood character. I was always like, I really want to do this big Bollywood entrance. And this felt like, well, this is kind of, at the time, it was like, well, this is it. This is my last chance to kind of do it. And I pitched it to Progress, and they were like, yeah, absolutely. This sounds great. Let's go for it. So I rounded up friends, trainees, other wrestlers who could be as part of the entrance.
Right.
And, if you look really closely in that lineup, when I come out onto the stage, when you look really closely at the lineup, you'll spot Ginny.
Oh wow!
Current NXT UK superstar Ginny is in that lineup. Roy Johnson, who'd later gone to do loads of stuff in Progress as well, so he's in that lineup as well. So they were there, and then Progress hired a dance group, which are the four people who are in the ring. So they're doing that, and then I said, right, we've got to use this music, Sing is King. Like, we've got to use this track, which was written for the film. And so they were like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do it. And so we actually had a rehearsal. We had like one rehearsal during the day.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get positioning and kind of knowing what I'd be doing, which was kind of just, flapping about really in the middle of the ring while these poor professional dancers were doing their thing. But they just wanted to get the timing right and make sure, I came out on the right chorus and, built up like that. So, and I think it really paid off. I think it was obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best entrances I've ever done personally.
Yeah.
And I think, it kind of got such a great reaction. And yeah, the song is such an earworm. Like so many people say, they hear that song once or twice and then that's it. They're just singing that song.
Oh, it's on my workout playlist now. Don't you worry. Man, it is an amazing song. You can dance, you can wrestle, you can commentate. Is there anything you can't do, bud?
Oh gosh. Get signed to a major company.
You're still a young lad. I don't know what you're talking about. You should. I mean, anybody is money on the table if they're not taking you up. But
there we go.
But yeah, so Progress Chapter 16. Were you able to make time to watch the show?
Yeah, I've done. I kind of shot through it quite quickly, but I made myself some notes and stuff on kind of the major points of each match. So
yeah, it was a great chat. I mean, Progress, especially in this era, every show's like incredible. I mean, it's just hitting, like, I guess really when British wrestling in the indies is starting to kind of get some steam here, because for a long time, and especially I guess when you were starting, it wasn't super prominent, I guess, right, in the early 2000s.
No, so we kind of went through dips and troughs. So when I first came in the early, so I debuted in like 2001. So FWA, as I mentioned earlier, FWA were kind of running the big shows that were getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It was kind of, FWA was the place a lot of the American indie guys were coming over to get kind of UK exposure. So, we had AJ Styles, we had Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnelli came over, like Paul London, you kind of, Christopher Daniels was another one. You name all the guys who are like the most prominent guys now, they all kind of at one point or the other came to FWA pretty much and came to UK. So I kind of came then and like FWA had been built very much on the ECW model. They modeled it very much on ECW, which had obviously just kind of filtered out at that point. And so that was the kind of place everyone wanted to be. As I said, we kind of trained there. So we went through this kind of real upward boom from sort of 2002 till about 2005.
Right.
And then around 2006, 2007, we just started dropping again. Like houses started going down again. Money wasn't there. FWA was running at a loss. So we then sort of plummeted again. So we were back down to like, across Britain, you were looking at again like 200 people in a house for a show, that kind of thing. And then around 2011, things started picking up again. So you started seeing those other shows sort of cropping up. And then obviously Progress was in the works around 2011 and then obviously came in 2012. So then that's when the big upswing kind of came back then, really. So.
Yeah, I'm curious because Ring of Honor, I cover Ring of Honor on this podcast as well. And I've been covering 2002 was when they started. And even from the beginning, Ring of Honor, they were bringing people from Japan, from the UK, from everywhere. Do you think that ties in at all with kind of the upward boom? Because I guess maybe people in America are kind of discovering people from the UK. And then also maybe that's why UK wrestling went down a few years later, is because everybody was going to Ring of Honor. Do you think there's any tie-in at all with that?
Well, I mean, there was a working agreement between FWA and Ring of Honor,
right?
Mostly which was fostered, I imagine, through Doug Williams, because obviously Doug Williams was he was the most well-known British wrestler at that time. He was the FWA champion, and he was working with alongside Ring of Honor at that time as well. So I think a lot of it got fostered through Doug, but they held one of the big shows in York Hall was Frontiers of Honor. Of which I think I was on that one. I was getting thrown around by a guy called Paul Burchill, who went on to be signed by
the Pirate.
Who went on to be signed by WWE. Yeah, the Pirate, Paul Burchill. That's right. And so you can see a very, very young me getting just tossed about the ring in that match. But yeah, so that was like one of the first times the two companies collaborated on the Frontiers of Honor show.
Gotcha.
Which was a big deal at the time, and as I said, you then had that working agreement between the two, and had a lot there. So I think that kind of helped. We were getting a lot of Ring of Honor stars over here at that time. So, but as I said, but then the money ran out. So suddenly we were running shows, and all these the top American independent guys, they weren't being flown over anymore. So, you're trying to, they were trying to draw on homegrown talent, and that wasn't really enough to keep people getting interested at the time. So you kind of still needed that back then. You still needed to have that sort of name draw from America to help sell the houses.
Right. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But in speaking of indie wrestling, the first match on the show, we got Screw Indie Wrestling facing off against FSU for the tag team championships. So first of all, so I've had various, other podcasters and friends come on and talk about progress in the early days. No one seems to know what FSU stands for. Do you have any idea? You've literally been in the ring with them. I hope you know.
There's two meanings actually to it.
Okay.
But first of all, I will point out many times on commentary, I kept screwing this up, and I kept saying SFU. And I used to have Glenn nudging me, and literally I had to write it down in bold letters on my pad, like FSU, because I just kept getting it wrong. I kept saying SFU for some reason. I couldn't know, but
that kind of rolls off the tongue more. Yeah, I can see that.
So the official family-friendly version is Friends Stand United.
Oh, so that's so wholesome.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. But the deeper one, which I'm pretty sure came from the horse's mouth of Eddie Dennis, it stands for fuck shit up.
It's very, very different themes. I guess, some nights they come out as one, some the other. It depends who they're facing.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And they kind of left it as like, well, we're not sure, take it to be either one. Whichever one you fancy on the night, that's the one we are. That's what FSU stands for.
I think both are great in their own ways, personally. Yeah. But yeah, so we got FSU. Now just saying it, it's going to make me smile every time I say it now. Versus Screw Indie Wrestling to open the show. So I guess apparently Mark Haskins has a knee injury here, so he can't compete alongside Shaw Samuels. So Haskins has the mic in his hand, and he calls out Rampage Brown, who is a former member of Screw Indie Wrestling. I guess there was never really an official breakup. Rampage kind of just split off, and organically he was getting over as a babyface, so kind of separated himself from that. But so Rampage comes out. He says he's done with the Screw Indie Wrestling stuff. He has a match later, so he doesn't want to get involved with this. But then out comes Martin Stone, aka Danny Burch, gives Rampage a huge cutter, and then all the Screw Indie Wrestling guys beat up on Rampage. Haskins is injured, I guess, but I guess he's technically isn't cleared, but he's still moving around pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, my main takeaway here is that Danny Burch, this is a whole different side of, I guess, Martin Stone here, but it's completely different than the Danny Burch we see in WWE. It's he's super charismatic here. I'm almost wondering if he's just too vulgar to be let loose in WWE.
Yeah, I mean, when and I will apologize. I'm just going to call him Martin because I've obviously known him. I've known him for years as Martin. Martin was kind of like that very British thug kind of gimmick, but a bit borderline, but could wrestle. And that was his kind of whole shtick over here, and that's kind of how he built his reputation on being this kind of very hard hitting, skin-headed, bruiser kind of guy. He was a massive, coming into us, and Martin was a massive fan of Dynamite Kid, Chris Benoit, that kind of style of wrestling. So that kind of really hard hitting style. So, and I do think, the kind of the version you get in NXT is a much more sanitized. Danny Burch is much more sanitized version of Martin Stone.
Yeah.
But Martin was always a pleasure to work with. Could really go in the ring. Was a real general in the ring as well. And you never really saw him in progress because he kind of was, and Martin spent a lot of years back and forthing with America. He was signed, he was not signed, he was signed again. Right. So, and I mean, you want to talk about journeys in wrestling. I think Martin's had one of the hardest and longest journeys to get to last time I spoke to him, I sent him a message when he won the NXT tag titles with Andy Lorcan, because it had been just such a long journey for him between getting knee injuries, coming back from injuries, flying to America, getting signed, being let go, coming back over here. And around this time he was back over here because we did British Boot Camp.
Right.
We had filmed TNA British Boot Camp before this show, and I think it aired around the same time the show took place, because we filmed it in the summer, but it didn't air to the October.
Gotcha.
And then Martin dipped in and out of like he started to do a bit more work with TNA after that over in America, and then sort of WWE picked him up again, and then that was kind of the run we saw from that point onwards. So it was great to have him in Progress. Even I think this may have been his only show. I'm not sure if he did another show.
I think he was on the show before this, but other than that, it very well may be.
Yeah, but it was great to have him there, and it was so I don't think just from the two chapters you'd see here, you'd get the full effect of what Martin Stone was all about.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, he's a completely different presentation than you see in WWE. He's out there in like jeans and a black tank top, and he's, like you said, just like a guy you'd see in a bar that would beat you up, that kind of guy. And yeah, in WWE, he's not calling anybody sheep shagging cunts. So not yet, at least. I don't know. Maybe that's something that could, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But he calls FSU that here, and then they come out, match gets underway. Really solid opener. Nothing that's going to kind of overshadow anything that happens later in the show, but they did enough to where the crowd was into it the whole time. FSU ends up getting the win with the next stop driver double stomp combo. But yeah, good match there. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Mark and Eddie were so over as a tag team.
Yeah.
And actually, that was the first tag match I had in Progress was against those two.
Right.
And it was actually the first time I'd met Eddie. I'd known Mark for a couple of years by that point, but it was the first time I met Eddie. And we hit it off straight away because we were both teachers, and he went on to be a head teacher as well, just like I am now. So we kind of me and Eddie connected straight away. So we had a really enjoyable tag match. But like I said, they were totally over. Really enjoyable. I mean, the other person to mention in that match as well was Shah Samuels.
Yes.
Again, another NXT UK guy now. And again, Shah's had a really long journey. To get there is incredible as we speak. Has got himself into incredible shape as of late.
Shredded.
He's used the last sort of 2 lockdowns really to kind of really work on his ring shape, and and he's brilliant. Shah is awesome, like really fun to be in the ring with. Really, really kind of old school type worker, if people want to call when you use those kind of phrases.
Right.
So yeah, it was and as you say, the tag match that night did exactly what it needed to do. It needed to be that sort of enough that action just to get the crowd going without taking away too much from any other matches as well. And FSU was so over with the crowd at that point, and I think they were the champs, weren't they? They were the champs at that point as well.
Yes.
Which is what everybody wanted. Everyone was kind of hoping they'd be the first tag champs and stuff. So, yeah, it was a good, really fun tag match with 4 really talented guys.
What do you think about the broken Progress logo shield deal that they used to represent the titles?
It was interesting. Let's put it that way. We kind of were used to the staff by that point anyway. I don't know if the belts come in by this chapter or not.
It debuts in this chapter.
It debuts in this chapter.
Yeah.
So obviously we were used to the staff, so we kind of knew they were going to go for something a bit wacky,
right?
And obviously they pulled out the shields, and we were like, okay, sure, why not? And they fit together. You can lock them together and stuff like that. So, but what I do love is that when they finally decided, they were like, no, we're just going to go for belts now. Obviously, the design of the tag titles to this day still is obviously the 2 halves of the shield.
Oh, okay.
So the current tag team belts are still those 2 yin yang signs that lock together. So
I think
that's
cool.
It's cool that they kept that up. So.
Yeah, that's cool. These broken shield belts are I don't know if cool is interesting is the word.
They were heavy as well, though. They were heavy. They were like proper weighted, like really solid.
I was actually going to ask because they look like foam, but they're solid.
They're really solid. Yeah, like I think they were sort of wood covered in resin or something like that or whatever, but they were weighty. You really felt them when you picked them up.
Right. What about the I don't know how to phrase this. Have you ever touched the staff? Is that is that heavy?
I have. Absolutely. No, that was a weighty, that was a weighty object as well.
Okay.
So, they I don't know, so I think some people did think they were like kind of like light props, but they were kind of very well made, very sturdy things.
Right. Yeah. Because Jimmy Havoc has used them like to win matches. It's like, is that something that's going to knock somebody out? But I guess from somebody who was there. So now it all makes sense to me. So yeah, good opener there. And then after that, we have a Natural Progression Series semifinal match. Zach Gibson versus Ali Armstrong. So the winner of this will face Flash Morgan Webster in the finals of the NPS. And so Ali Armstrong's out there coming out to Toxic by Britney Spears. What are your thoughts on Ali Armstrong? I'm not really sure how to take him.
I liked Ali. He had a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
He came up through the Progress Training School, which at the time was called the Projo. He was one of the first guys to come up. So,
Right.
And Progress obviously used to run the Endeavour shows, which were kind of like the training school shows, which I helped out and did a couple of matches on those as well. And so I'd met Ali, and Ali was really willing to learn. He was really worked hard. And he was a generally quite fun guy to be around as well. So it was good to see him getting a shot against someone like Zach Gibson, who hands down was one of the best wrestlers like this country has produced. Easily. So I think it was a really good matchup for Ali to kind of be put in there with someone like Zach, who was the perfect person to kind of really guide Ali through being on a bigger stage, being in from being in what the previous venue of that the Endeavour shows are at, to being in the ballroom, which is kind of like, right, you're in the ballroom now, so you've got to up your game a little bit. And Zach was the perfect person for Ali to be in there for that kind of thing.
Right. And I'm totally with you as far as Zach Gibson and how good he is. I'm surprised he's not a bigger deal where he's at. He seemed like even when he kind of debuted in NXT UK, he had a lot of steam to him. And I guess he's doing good work in the tag team that he's in. But I feel like that's a guy that could be a top guy anywhere he is.
Yeah, and he is what I describe as a wrestler's wrestler as well, like quite easily, just like total professional. Like there's one chapter, I can't even remember what chapter it is, but he's in a tag, I'm sure he's in a tag match or something. And there's a jump start. The match started with a jump start. And Zach had because obviously Zach Gibson started most of his matches on the mic. He was on the mic. He was doing the best in the world, Liverpool's number one, soon to be the world's number one. He was doing all that shtick. And the match started straight away. And for any non-wrestlers out there, one of the cardinal sins in indie wrestling, it's fine in WWE because they've got money, but indie wrestling, you do not drop the microphone. You do not throw the microphone. You don't drop the microphone. That costs money. It's coming out of someone's wage packet. You look after the microphone. So you should find on most indie shows, no one like lob. In WWE they just lob microphones. Because someone hands them another one. You can't do that in indie wrestling. There's like 2 microphones tops. And so Zach takes the bump, and he does this bump, and he's still got the microphone in his hand, and he's protecting it.
Oh no!
And I'm like in such awe that he has managed to like start this match, and he's still looking after the microphone. That I'm like poking Glenn, going, "Did you see that?" And I realised we should have started commentary at this point because we're supposed to start commentary as soon as the bell's gone. And I'm too busy marking out that Zach Gibson has protected the microphone. So that is how much of a professional Zach Gibson is. There you go.
Yeah, that's always something I've taken for granted. Growing up watching wrestling, like you said, wrestlers on WWE, they'll talk and then they'll throw the mic into the fucking crowd or whatever. But then I go out and buy this little thing. I'm like, man, how are people just slamming these things and breaking? Like, it's something. But yeah, Zach Gibson's great, and like you said, it's a great kind of juxtaposition between him and Ali, because Ali Armstrong's like very lighthearted and comedic, whereas Zach Gibson is pretty much what he is now, is very serious wrestler. So I think those two different styles blended really well in this match. The British chants are particularly heavy in this match. They're kind of strewed throughout the entire show, but there's a lot of chants. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I'm sure that's vulgar in some way. They don't like Liverpool here, I guess.
No,
right?
no. You're in London, so you have to, you have to give anyone from Liverpool a lot of jib here. So yeah, and the crowd loved it. They loved that. There was a there was a comedy show back in like the early 90s called Harry Enfield. There's a comedian called Harry Enfield, and he did a skit of 3 brothers who were from Liverpool. And they really amped up the accents. They're like, calm down, and so everybody was doing. They used to do throwback stuff like that to Zach Gibson. Whenever Zach Gibson he'd get, but then he would just play on it. He would amp it up. He would always just completely eat it up. And because of that, he always had the crowd in the palm of his hand. So
right, yeah. Where's my stereo? That's the one. That's the one I caught. But yeah, really good match here. You have Ali's kind of just being a little bit of banter in the beginning, kind of did the slow motion senton over the rope and all that shit. But Zach eventually gets advantage, starts working the arm for his Shankly Gates submission. Yeah. There's one point where Gibson, so he does the whole deal where he runs into the opposite corner, springboards off the second rope, and then runs back into the opposite corner, but he slips on the turnbuckle pad, and the crowd did not let him get away with that.
No,
to say the least.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They wouldn't have done. No, the Progress crowd just, they saw and heard absolutely everything. And so, when something like that happens again, you can either let it get to you or you can just roll with it. And I think that was one of the things with the Progress crowd. You could just roll with it, and
Yeah, he just kind of sat in it. It's like, yep, this happened.
Yeah.
And Ali hits an out of nowhere RKO. It's out of nowhere because he screamed it at him. Ali hits a Olympic slam because he's wearing a singlet. So I think the rule is if you wrestle in a singlet, you have to do an Olympic slam.
Absolutely.
I think you probably teach that in school, right? And then he goes for the Gaines bomb, which is like a Vader bomb, but with a flip. But he misses. And then Gibson hits a second rope lung blower, followed by a PK, followed by this Shankly Gates submission for the tap out. So Zach Gibson wins here, moves on to the finals, and that sets up Zach Gibson versus Flash Morgan Webster at a future show, which seems like a great match to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, Flash. I mean, jumping over to Flash was a really hot prospect at that time.
Yeah,
had really been building up a name for himself. I mean, it's funny, someone like Zach Gibson being in the natural progression, because Zach Gibson had been around as long as I had,
right, yeah,
but just not on the London scene and not in Progress. So it's quite funny him being in a natural progression, which is supposed to be like the young up and comers tournament.
Yeah.
Whereas Zach Gibson was very, very well established around, especially up in the north. Up in the northern scene. So and so to put like two talents like Zach Gibson and Flash together was, you could just guarantee that was going to be a great match.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts on that match specifically?
Yeah, like I said, I just think it's like Zach is the perfect person to carry through a younger guy who had a less experienced guy who you want to give a big opportunity to. Zach Gibson is the perfect person to do it, because so many matches that I commentated on with Zach Gibson as well. Like when Zach, and most often than not, Zach was the more experienced wrestler in the match. Yeah. But one of the beauties of Zach is Zach had a knack of still making you think the other guy could win. Like that is kind of the key to Zach's talents, is that he could make you believe the other guy might actually just pull it off and win, and then he would snatch victory away. With the Shankly Gates is on, victory is snatched. And I think, again, this is a perfect demonstration, this match, of his ability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mark of a good heel, right? Is making the baby face you're facing to elevate them, I guess. So, but yeah, really good stuff there. But after that, we get a little change of pace. We get a street fight. El Ligero versus Michael Gilbert'S. No gimmicks required, Michael Gilbert here. So the backstory, I suppose, is, Gilbert's been kind of talking shit about Ligero, how, I don't need any gimmick, but you have this guy walking around in a mask and horns. So there's kind of a personal issue there between these two, and they've been costing each other matches in the previous chapters. So that sets up this street fight. And both guys, they're out there in their jeans, a come as you are kind of deal. So Ligero comes out, he grabs a chair before Gilbert comes out, and Ligero goes to the stage, hides to the side of the stage, which is a brilliant move. So when Gilbert comes out, Ligero chucks the chair at Gilbert and immediately jump started here. And Ligero does a somersault off the stage. Really, really hot start to this match. Ligero pulls out a road closed sign, which is just comedically big. I mean, it's like there's no need for a sign that big. Pulls out was it Britney Spears? Was it a Britney Spears mask he pulled out?
Yes, that's right.
I guess, sure. What else? Where else are you going to keep a Britney Spears mask than a Progress ring?
Absolutely.
They're fighting all over the ring, getting tossed into the front row, all over the chairs. But Gilbert manages to get control eventually in this crack. So they're in their jeans. It's a street fight, right? And then Gilbert rolls Ligero into the ring. Ligero's down. He's out. Michael Gilbert takes the time to take his shirt off, take his pants off, and he has the wrestling tights and knee pads and boots because he's a serious wrestler, damn it.
Of course.
Not going to do this gimmick match stuff. And so Gilbert grabs the chair as if he's going to hit Ligero with it, but he just sets it up, sits on the chair, and just puts on a chin lock. That's how he uses the chair, to sit to help him with the chin lock. I think Gilbert smashed this gimmick. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. And and I mean, he went for a real metamorphosis later on in later chapters, and turned completely, did an about turn completely on this. But I think, portraying that idea, and it was kind of born out of the sentiment of like everyone's so gimmicky in this promotion, and everyone's got their gimmick. I'm just going to be the straight lace wrestler, and I'm going to wrestle that style. And I think again that was the perfect way to do it. Was kind of during the middle of this match to kind of say, okay. So, all you fans, you kind of wanted this. You wanted this street fight, and here you go. We're going to start off with chairs and fight, and then boom, straight in the middle of it. Nope, bam, jeans are off, back to wrestling. I'm going to take this back. So, even though you fans wanted this, I'm taking it away from you.
Right.
And I'm going to give you this as well. So, I think that was really intriguing. I mean, it did. The only thing was, I don't know. I mean, in hindsight now, maybe it doesn't really matter. I did find it strange that this was the match that was on before me and Stixx.
Yeah.
Considering the kind of stakes me and Stixx were kind of going into our match with, to kind of have a really gimmicked match, street fight type match, that did panic me a little bit. I got to be honest, and I was a bit worried. I was like, oh my god, the crowd are going to be burnt out because I got especially as I walk into the venue that afternoon and just rehearse the Bollywood dance, walk backstage, and then and there's I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy Havoc who was doing it, was stapling the barbed wire down to a board, and I'm like, oh Christ, right, okay, right, they're gonna do that, so that panicked me a little bit. I'll be totally honest. It's kind of like, oh wow, it's a real gimmick match. But I think we all balanced out in the end. But I was kind of a bit worried, like going into that, like how Christ, we've got to follow that. They've got a barbed wire board, and we've got to follow that. So,
but at the same time, could that be a sign of confidence and the build that you and Stixx established and the quality of match that you guys could put on? So I guess,
I think so. I think we kind of knew we had enough going in. And again, I think with the entrance as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a buffer in between the matches.
Yeah. I mean, that was like a 6-minute entrance or something. Like, because me and Stixx together doing both our entrances was like 6 minutes long. So I think that did help to buffer it as well. That kind of helped to just bring the audience down a bit and give them a bit of a filler before our match started.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was... but no, I mean, going back to what you said though, I think it was I do think it was a great gimmick to kind of to have in the middle of all of this,
right.
Someone who just wanted to strip it down to like, no, this is pure wrestling. This is British wrestling. We're going to do it. We're going to do British wrestling.
And he continues with that because after this chin lock deal, there's like a pile of chairs set up in the ring. They fight outside. The crowd throws chairs in the ring, or they hand them to Aguero. Aguero sets them in the middle of the ring, but Gilbert kind of takes advantage. He sets Aguero on the top rope like he's going to superplex him onto this pile of chairs, like we've seen a bunch of times. But he like teases it, but instead he just locks in an abdominal stretch on the top rope. It's just like. It's so good. Crowd hates it. Like you said, they wanted the gimmick, they wanted all the tomfoolery, but he's not going to give them any of it. But eventually Gilbert gets knocked off onto these chairs, and then Aguero goes to the outside as if that's not enough, grabs a bag of thumbtacks, or I'm sorry, drawing pins. Right, of course. Lays them out on the mat. Aguero. So there's this whole. They're trading moves. Who's going to get, sent into these drawing pins? Gilbert goes for a tiger bomb into him. But eventually Aguero fights back, but Gilbert hits a spinning slam onto Aguero. Aguero lands in the tacks, and then fucking Michael Gilbert picks him back up and gives him a blue thunder bomb into the tacks. Brutal. Have you ever taken a thumbtacks spot?
No. I have taken a stack of poppadom spot before, which really hurt because poppadoms are very sharp and crispy, especially when you bump into them. So I completely scratched up my back on poppadoms.
What? That sounds very British. What are poppadoms?
Poppadoms, very, very Indian, really. They are the kind of if you ever had Indian food, they're like large crisps. Basically, they're just like giant crisps. Which there's sort of these round discs. They're very crunchy, and you snap them, and they're very crunchy and stuff like that. So it's like basically bumping on a load of potato chips, which isn't as fun as it sounds because they're really sharp and scratchy. So
you know what? I can't say that I've taken a bump on a bag of potato chips, so I'll take your word for it.
There you go. But no, I've never been blessed with a bag full of thumbtacks, thankfully.
There's still time. You're still going.
There's still time. God.
So yeah, that happens, and then it's not over. Like you brought up before, Aguero, he fights back, and then he walks to the back, grabs a barbed wire board. So it's a piece of, I guess, plywood with barbed wire. You said Jimmy Havoc stapled it to. That's like so on brand. Yeah. So the board gets set up in the ring. Barbed wire is strewing out of it. So both guys are trying to slam each other into it. It builds great anticipation. I was like puckered up, like watching like who's gonna get slammed into this barbed wire. Really good stuff there. But eventually, Aguero hits a cutter onto Michael Gilbert. Goes basically like torso first into this barbed wire, and Aguero wraps like a loose strand of barbed wire around the throat of Gilbert in like a crossface kind of submission. Gilbert has to tap. So Aguero gets the wins here in a brutal match. Gilbert's the whole stomach was bleeding, and he actually gets a standing ovation, oddly enough, because he'd been so heavily booed coming into this. But I think he walked out with a lot of respect from the fans there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as much. I mean, the fans were totally into the gimmick anyway. You know, so they were totally into this and booed. But obviously, they also appreciate you when you went out and really, you know, put your body out on the line and stuff like that. And the fans Progress always really appreciated that kind of thing. So it wasn't a surprise to kind of get that kind of reaction. Yeah. But again, I appreciate the storyline. I like that storyline of like, no, I'm the straight-laced wrestler. I'm not going to use any of this crap. But actually, later in the match, is like, well, actually, yeah, I am going to try use it now because he does the thing. And and I think that's always, obviously, like a good heel, they sell out their principles, at the first opportunity. So I think that's and that was nicely played in that they did that as well. So, but yeah, I remember the blood. I do remember them like coming back and covered in blood and stuff like that. And
right,
and I was like, wow, that was brutal. So, but anytime I ever see barbed wire, it just makes me shiver. So, fair play to them for that.
Yeah, the getting out of it seems like the worst part to me because you get slammed into it, but then you have to like rip your skin off. Can only imagine. But so you have all this carnage, all this brutality, all this violence, the weapons, the sharp objects, and then we have my guest here, RJ Singh, following that up against Stixx, career versus career. Like we kind of mentioned, this was all set up in the previous chapter. Very personal kind of vendetta established between you two. So it's kind of Stixx was like, hey, you have this cushy teacher job. Wrestling's all I have. And then you kind of go back at him about him traveling to America, not finding success there. A bunch of stuff that was covered in that promo. And that promo, before it, I didn't know you guys were associated with each other at all. But whatever it was, 5 minutes later, I'm like totally into it, totally invested. And obviously, very high stakes here, career versus career. So whoever loses, they don't just leave Progress, they have to retire, allegedly. So,
like all good wrestling retirements.
Yeah, exactly. You're the Ric Flair of the UK.
That's it.
But yeah, we talked about the entrances earlier. You come out, Sing is King by Snoop Dogg. All the dancers, all the streamers, just an incredible presentation. And Stixx, at the same token, comes out. He comes out is wearing like a regular ring jacket, but then he turns around and grabs his chain, which like is what he made his name off of, is coming out with that chain around his neck. So the reason I like this is because the way you come out is as if it's your last match. So it kind of sets the tone of like, okay, these guys are like building this up like it's the finale on both of their careers. So feasibly any guy could lose. So, and going into this, I didn't really know who lost. I was guessing you because I knew you went into commentary eventually. But going into this, I think you guys did a good job at establishing, who knows who's going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the major things here was there was so much behind the scenes that kind of went into this, like with Glenn, one of the Progress owners. He was an actor, obviously, and so he worked a lot on the promo stuff with us. Yeah. Because he, obviously he kind of wanted it, and he wanted it just like how he envisioned it. So he helped us a lot with that. Obviously we were able to draw on a lot of personal history, so a lot of what we said, and obviously we did talk to each other beforehand, and we're like, I'm just going to mention this, I'm going to mention your divorce, and I'm going to mention your daughter and stuff like that. And so we knew we were going to say stuff that was really personal, and that we knew that when we reacted to it, the crowd would react, because they would be like, oh my gosh, they actually said that about each other. I can't believe it. And then, and obviously we said about the big entrance, and I wanted to do the big Bollywood entrance, and they, Progress would call that. But I think what's, but Stixx, like, again, I think that was the thing, the layers we kind of tried to add into this as well. So like Stixx having not come out with the chains for a long time, like how he used to, it was kind of like, I'm going back to the old Stixx. So obviously why he went back out, came back out with the chains again. And what I think was amazing as well, like he then, and this was Stixx's idea, he just said like, on your entrance, I'm just gonna be in the corner like I'm praying, and I'm not gonna move the entire. And if you watch the entrance back now, he doesn't shift at all for like the 5 minutes of my entrance.
Yeah, that imagery of him sitting in the corner with just facing away from the ring, and then the shot, because it shoots him from the face, and then in the background you see you and all the dancers dancing and the music, but he's just there so stoic. Like it's an incredible image.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, and again, it's like you say, it's the real juxtaposition of the two things. You've got this lively, loud entrance going on, and he's just there the whole time. And I think that was really fair play to him. That was his idea, and I think that paid off really well, because like you said, it conjures a brilliant image when you watch it back.
Yeah, for sure, and that really sets the tone of the match. So you guys both make your entrances. Immediately, there's "You're both awesome" chants, so the crowd clearly respects you two. You kind of meet in the middle. Jim Smallman says he clarifies that whoever loses this has to leave Progress, or has to leave wrestling, not just Progress. No handshake. You guys just go back to your opposite corners, and the match gets underway. So you guys are kind of staring each other down in the beginning, and right out the gate, you just hit them with a roll up. 1, 2, and then kick out. Like, it's very like, oh shit, we're going now. So the intensity, I think that's one thing about this match. The intensity that you guys showed was prevalent both in the beginning and all the way through the end. And it is honestly, it's just a very old school match, but just done very well. You weren't trying to out high fly Will Ospreay later in the show. You weren't trying to out gimmick the match we saw previously. You guys knew that this match had a really good foundation. And I think you guys executed it really well.
And again, I think, the story we were trying to tell is two guys who know each other really well are trying to get the victory really quickly over the other, because neither wants to draw this out, as it were. Especially in the early part of the match, like neither wants to draw it out. So it's kind of be like, right, we've got to try and win as quick as we can. Yeah.
And you guys are, and that's it, because there's a lot of counters in this match, because you guys obviously know each other very well. So it kind of, what it does is force you guys to do things you wouldn't normally do. So like, for example, you knocks Stixx to the outside, and then you go to the top rope and hit this crazy moonsault to the outside on the Stixx. I don't know if that's a common thing you did, but
not to the outside.
Yeah,
the moonsault press around, was part of my arsenal. And I think if you go back to chapter 12, you see me hit it on the London riots, but never to the outside. But I was like, again, I said Stixx like this because we're going high stakes here, and like the whole thing's supposed to be high stakes. I did it to the outside. The only thing I really remember about that, because it's quite early, I think it's fairly early in the match. It's quite early in the match, isn't it?
Yeah, fair, yeah.
So when all I can remember is I think it's my right leg, my right knee comes down and really clocks him. Like I really clocked him with that, or with my right knee on his head. Oh. So two thoughts go into my head of like, oh my God, like, have I just broken his neck? Because I really felt like I connected. And the second thing, this shooting pain went through my knee. Ooh. And I was like, oh no, like, I suddenly
right at the beginning too.
I had this moment of panic of like, oh my God, am I going to be able to get up and walk and stuff like that? So, but luckily it was one of those things of like, he was absolutely fine. He's got very hard head Stixx, always has done. So he was fine, and I shook it off as well. So, but I'd never done the moonsault to the outside. I'd never done that before. I'd only ever done moonsaults inside the ring. So, but again, my trust for Stixx, the fact that he's the size of a barn door also helps. Because I knew he'd be there for me. So it was, and it really was like, I'm just going to close my eyes and I'm going to jump, and whatever happens.
Like you said, you can't miss him. He's a big bloke. So.
Exactly. So yeah, I did, like I said, I really remember having that moment of panic.
So yeah, and talking about the match, you hit that moonsault, and classic Stixx has to outdo you a little bit. So he does. So you're on the outside, kind of like leaning against the front row. He's in the ring. He sprints towards the rope, hops up to the top rope, and leaps at you, but you get out of the way. So he just goes cascading into the first couple rows of chairs, which is again, it's like you guys know each other so well, so you have to bust out all these crazy moves that you wouldn't normally see, which I like that a lot. Then the guys finally get back into the ring. Stixx is able to fight back a little bit. He hits a boss man slam, but doesn't want to go for the pin. Hits a second one, still doesn't want to go for the pin. And hits a third, goes for the pin, even though he doesn't want to end your career, but he goes for the pin. But you kick out at 2, and then so you're fighting to get back up. You've just been hit with these 3 huge slams. Stixx charges at you in the corner. You counter with a super kick. You hit a falcon arrow and then a Sington bomb for a 2 count. Beautiful swanton, by the way. You see a lot of guys, they like overshoot it or whatever, but perfect. Very Sin Cara-esque, or sorry, Sin Cara. Then so you both you guys get up. You kind of hug in the middle of the ring. You're kind of overcome with emotion of what this match is doing. But you dirty dog, you push him off out of this hug. Super kick to the chops. For a 2 count. I thought that was it. I was like, man, this smarmy dude's gonna get this win this way. Stixx responds with a sit-out power bomb of his own. He gets a 2 count. Really good false finishes towards the end. But ultimately, that damn Stixx hits a brutal cross power bomb onto yourself, and he pins you, gets the win, and then you just never wrestle again after that. So
ever.
But yeah. Great match. I mean, what was any other like thoughts as far as like what went into it or what was happening during it?
Yeah, I mean, again, the hug spot I think was Stixx's idea. I think he said that he was like, "Let's have this moment right where we're both down, we both get up, we look like we're about to go for it, and then we kind of hug." But then straight away, like right then, bam, it's like we've had that moment of like we're still friends, and it's like then bam, hit me with a super kick and go for the go for a kill, And so again, I think I had said a year before that like this is probably going to be my last year, because at the time it was, I really felt it was just because the way life was turning out. So again, it was that kind of the mission of the match, even though most people pretty much knew it would be me losing, it was to try to convince them otherwise. It was like, let's just see if we can try to convince them that actually, it might be Stixx, it could be. I think that's that's what we were going for. But there's one bit we did, I think it was the twist. There was like there's a sit out power bomb he does, which isn't the finishing power bomb. It's another one. We actually stole that from Eddie Guerrero and Test, I think, from WrestleMania.
Oh, really?
17 or 18 or something like that. We'd seen it, and because the way it sets up is like I run into Stixx, he sort of twists me and then twists me again, and then powerbomb does the powerbomb. We were such a big fan of that. We'd done that, and we hadn't done that in about 5 years at that point. We were like, let's throw that in again. Let's do that. Can we still do it? Well, let's find out. But the final thing was just the powerbomb, because I've taken that powerbomb off Stixx multiple times, and every time without fail it's knocked the wind out of me completely.
It looked like it. You felt like a bag of rocks.
Just literally every last breath of air just leaves your body. And I don't know if it wasn't this one. We did it back in, I want to say like 2004. We did that to finish a match back in 2004, and he really chucked me up high, came crashing down, and then so it knocks the wind out of me. And this is back in 2004, and then he pins me with his hand on my chest. So not only have I like lost the ability to breathe, he's further restricting any chance I have of.
Right.
I remember that back in 2004, just going, "Thank God that is the end of the match," because I actually genuinely don't think I could get back up and continue on. And I had exactly the same feeling in 2014. 10 years later, he hits me with the same move, and I just had the same feeling. I'm like, thank God that is the end of the match, because I've got no breath left in me, and that is it. So, and that's it. And then and it was weird. It's weird seeing it back now as well. Like at the time, because I was like, wow, that's like the final 3 count, and that was and yeah, it was a surreal moment. It was a surreal moment, and it was kind of that, because I think when the 3 count went off as well, I don't think there was that massive pop of like, whoa, but it was that kind of like, oh my God, it's actually, that's it. The 3 count has actually happened. Like, that's it. And that was the kind of the atmosphere of the crowd. That's certainly what I remember, at the time when we were doing the show, was that crowd just kind of had that, oh my God, it's actually, wow, gosh, it's actually happened. they've really gone through with it. They've really done it. There's no screwy finish. There's no screwy twist here. It's like that they've gone ahead and done it. So, yeah.
Yeah, after the match, I was waiting for somebody I was waiting for like Stixx to hit you with a low blow or something to happen. But no, it's really just you lose. You cut a great promo for thanking the owners, the wrestlers, the fans. The king has left the building, as you put it. Which is a great line. Then you leave. The music plays. You leave, and that's just like. Again, like I'm waiting for something to happen. Like, oh no, Singh can't be done. Like something's got to jumpstart here. But nope, you just leave, and they cut to like a side by side image of you and Stixx, your stare down in this match, and I guess one of your first ones. Do you recall what that older picture was from?
Yeah, it's from like 2002. So the older picture was from like 2002 when we were both like that was like in our second year of wrestling, I think it was. So
right,
we again, Progress had asked for some old photos of us together. So like the month before, I'd emailed him a load of pictures, like pictures from our weddings and all kinds of photos, and
that's cool.
It was great. So it was great that it was almost a happy accident, pardon me, that we had recreated the second photo of like the two of us with the referee in the middle. And then they kind of went back, and so it was cool that we that they had those side by sides, and it was really great.
Yeah, that's a great shot. Yeah, for sure. It's in Stixx. Is Stixx still going nowadays?
Yeah. He took some time away a couple of years ago. So he owns a wrestling school up in Nottingham called House of Pain. Very successful wrestling school. Then he's just in the last month upgraded to a new building with 2 rings, multiple gym equipment, stuff like that. But he took some time away. He needed to refresh about I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. He took about a year away from the ring, spent some more time with his family, just concentrate on the wrestling school and get the wrestling school up and running. And then, again, got the bug, came back refreshed, got the bug again, and has been wrestling ever since. So still going strong.
I just saw a picture of him recently. He's looking jacked.
Oh, he's big old boy is old Stixx. Yeah, he always, always was. And again, at age 40, he's looking great. He's looking great for his age. So.
Right. Yeah. Both you guys actually are looking like way more jacked than you are in this match for whatever reason.
Yeah.
He's aging like a fine wine.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm probably in better shape now than I was back then. And as I say, so Stixx as well. So.
Right.
But, and it was nice. They kind of they gave me the mic time, and there was genuine tears. Like at that point for me, it was looking out to the crowd. The crowd. There's loads of people crying in the crowd. And Jim as well. Jim was stood in the ring, had a tear in his eye as well. So it was a really, really hugely emotional moment. So, to have that kind of moment was great. There's some really wonderful photos as well. Me stood on the turnbuckle for the final time, and everyone stood up.
Yeah.
But it's true. But I did tell a story. I kind of hinted at it in the promo at the end, where I say, one day I'll tell you all about the story about the guy who nearly, turned down Progress. And that's a true story, because when I first got contacted by Progress, I mean, no one had heard of Progress. And they messaged me and they're like, yeah, we're going to be running in London. And no one ran in London back in that part of the late 2000s. Nobody ran London because no one could seemingly get much out of London for shows. And they're like, we're coming to London. And I was like, I was emailing them back and forth, and I was like, what kind of promotion are you looking to be? And they were like, oh, we're kind of going for this strong style, Ring of Honor, Dragon Gate kind of style. And my actual genuine reply was, and you sure you want me? Like, are you sure you want me? Like, I was like, it's not really what I do. And they were like, no, we think you're perfect. So I nearly turned down Progress entirely. And that's kind of what I alluded to in that promo. So, but and this will be a nice segue here. But what followed was the interval. So that our match brought us to the interval, and I pretty much spent the interval going around talking to people and thanking everyone and still in my gear, and all that, and then I actually I lost track of time, and I don't know if you can see. You might not be able to see it on TV, but so I was actually still out there when Ospreay and Robertson started their match.
Really?
I was still at the bar. So
that's hilarious.
It was either just as their entrances were going off, or once they'd got in the ring. I think it might have even I kind of edged myself away around the cameras and then to the back again. So I'm still out there.
The thought of you having this real emotion, you have this great match. You give a great promo. It's emotional. You're seeing all your friends in the back. It's this great moment, and then you have this next bullshit happens as this is going on. So like you said, that's the basically the main event going into the halfway main event. I don't know, is that is a term, but it goes into the intermission, and during the intermission, they hold a raffle, and boy howdy, whenever they show the raffle on the DVD, you know some shit's about to go down. I think the last time they did it was when Jimmy Havoc turned heel, so you know something was up here. So we got the raffle, and you a big raffle fan, first of all?
It depends. I think, certain shows, I think it fits really well. I mean, it is a long-standing tradition of British wrestling. Do you have that in American wrestling? Do you have raffles in American?
So we have them kind of just in general in America every now and then, every so often.
Yeah, they're kind of a staple of British wrestling shows over here.
Right.
It's just, and obviously that which comes from our county fairs and school fetes and things like that. There's always a raffle. So in British wrestling, you kind of get used to it. I think the people who hate the raffle, though, because generally a lot of promotions do the raffle before a match, so they won't do it just before the interval or going into the interval. They'll do the raffle. So say like second half will start, there'll be a match, and then before the next match, they'll have the raffle there. The people who hate the raffle the most are the two guys who are stood behind the curtain waiting to come out. And they're just like, "Oh, will you just get on with Like I did a show on Saturday, and exactly the same thing. They're like, "Will you please just get on with the raffle?"
Right.
So the two guys always waiting for the raffle to finish. Absolutely hate it. So
would you rather follow a raffle or a match that had barbed wire boards in it?
Oh, God, I think on this show, I think we made the right call on this show with following the barbed wire match.
At least he had some momentum going, I suppose. So we have the raffle here, and they had this whole deal where they, I guess they picked the winner on a little projector screen that's on the side. So the lights go out, and it's like a countdown clock. There's the crowds chanting Y2J, which is hilarious. And then, by God, the countdown clock gets hacked. And so there's this weird, ominous music of like growling. Like, I don't know how you would describe it. And so, by the way, FSU is out there, I should mention, because they're going to present the raffle, I suppose. Yeah. So they're out there, and then the lights go out, and then the screen gets hacked, and all of these people come out wearing, is it like purge masks?
No, they were, what's it called, masks? V for Vendetta.
Oh, okay.
The Guy Fawkes masks.
Right.
V for Vendetta, that's what they were.
Yeah, so you got like a bunch of people coming out wearing those masks. Some of them get in the ring. I think it's like 3 of them get in the ring, and they start beating down FSU. They pull out a toolbox, just unload the toolbox onto the mat. There's wrenches and screwdrivers in there, and they're using all these tools to decimate FSU, the friendly, was it the Friends Standing United?
Friends Stand United.
Yes, and they are not standing here. They're on the ground, and Eddie Dennis gets his feet taped to the ring post as they continue to beat on him, beating up Marcus. So this lasts for a while, and the crowd doesn't know how to react to it, because, like I said, during this whole time, there's this like weird weird music sound effects going on, and they're all in masks and black hoodies and pants. I guess that sets up a little feud between them. Feel free to let me know on spoilers. Who are these guys in masks, and do they amount to anything really?
The masks were, how many were there? Were there 3 guys or 2 guys?
There were like 3 main people in the ring, I believe, but there were like a couple surrounding the ring. So
one of them was Danny Garnell, who I wrestled on the previous chapter.
Yeah.
Danny Garnell was one of them. Another one was Damon Moser, who was was again another Progress trainee, came up through shows and would feature later on. And I think one of them was Ligero.
Oh, really?
One of them was Ligero as well.
I thought I saw some horns poking out.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, quite obviously, because the shape, size, and physique is clearly him.
Right.
It's really obviously him. So, but then, and they later introduced, I mean, I don't know how much I can spoil here, introduced the leader of the Faceless as well.
Okay.
Which is a returning Nathan Cruz.
Oh, wow.
Who'd been out for some time. and then came back as the leader of the Faceless. And then literally as soon as they revealed Nathan Cruz, they stopped being the Faceless.
Okay, really?
Yeah, they stopped being the Faceless. They kicked out Garnell and Moser, and they reformed with Gibson and Mastiff and became not the Originals. What was their name?
It sounds very much like Retribution. And
the Origin. Sorry, there you go. They were called the Origin. They became the Origin.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That
became
sounds interesting.
Yeah, they became the Origin. So it evolved. Like, I don't think the Faceless thing got over as much as they wanted it to. The crowd really weren't into it.
Right.
And they kind of...
There's a what the fuck chant after this.
Yeah.
If that gives you any indication of how they felt about it.
Yeah. I mean, they did various things with the face as well. They messed with Progress's social media for one day. They took over the social media. They did all that kind of thing. But I just don't think the crowd ever really got into it. I've got to say 100%. They were kind of a bit underwhelmed by it. So as soon as they did the reveal of like Nathan Cruz is the leader,
right.
and then they kicked out Moser and Garnell and had Mastiff and Gibson replace them as the Origin, and then they kind of just took over as the Origin there, and I think that was probably the right call.
Right, man. In hindsight, maybe they should have just had the raffle.
Yeah,
that probably would have gotten over more, huh?
100%. Yeah.
Man, if there's any two guys that could follow that tomfoolery that just happened, it's Paul Robinson and Will Ospreay facing off here in this next match, and the Will Ospreay's Thunder Bastard title is on the line, which for anyone unaware, that's basically Mr. Money in the Bank kind of a deal, and that kind of plays into the end of the show. Paul Robinson, Will Ospreay, former tag team partners, former Swords of Essex. Paul Robinson turned on Will Ospreay a few chapters ago and joined Regression along with Jimmy Havoc. So very personal feud here. And everybody in the crowd hates Paul Robinson. I mean, that dude is just, he looks like a rat. Like it's an easy person to boo. There's a Jimmy's little bitch chant. There's at one point, Paul Robinson, he has Ospreay in like a chin lock, and he yells up at the balcony where I guess Ospreay's fiance is. Paul Robinson asks, I don't even know what he said. He yells at her, but then she yells back, "Yeah, you fucking wanker." So the crowd pops hard for that, and so did I. That was amazing. But yeah, really good match between these two, as you would expect. Cool. A very young Will Ospreay, very different than his current presentation, but still super fun to watch. And Ospreay starts this match. He's wearing a T-shirt, which I thought was odd, but it turns out because Robinson eventually rips it off, and he's covered in KT tape all over his back and neck. So I guess he has an injured back and neck. Yeah. Which Paul Robinson pretty much attacks throughout the entire match. He's doing these like closed fist punches, like right on the tape. But towards the end, Will fights back, hits like a 619 over the top rope somehow. Hits a standing shooting star, a big brain buster. Doesn't get the win though. So you got lots of counters, lots of good false finishes in this match. I popped hard for that DDT that Paul Robinson did. I don't know if you caught that, but it's basically, I don't know how to describe it. It was like a running DDT, but it wasn't like a jumping deal. It's like more of a spike.
Yeah.
Like just a really good DDT. I know you're a big DDT fan yourself, so.
I'm a DDT.
Best move in wrestling.
Best move.
Ultimately, Ospreay hits the Os Cutter, followed by a flipping DDT, if you can picture that in your head. Calls it the Essex Destroyer. And that gives Will Ospreay the win. So, yeah, really good match. Will Ospreay is still the Thunder Bastard. And, yeah, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, Will and Paul knew each other really well from like backyarding days. Yeah. I knew Paul for a long time before this, and me and Paul have wrestled multiple times for a company called Lucha Britannia. And Lucha Britannia, which wasn't a wrestling company really, it was like an entertainment sort of company, burlesque, kind of company, and the wrestling was just part of the show. So Paul would wrestle as a character called Leon Britannico, which was your, British babyface. And I'd wrestle under a mask as a Bengal tiger, wearing a tiger mask, like an orange tiger mask. And so we wrestled multiple times, and Paul was like the high flyer of the show. And he was always our high flyer. And I think what people didn't realize, and I don't think Progress ever really saw it, is that Paul was as an adept high flyer as Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
But Paul kind of saw the writing on the wall of like, Will is going to be Britain's next big high flyer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to completely do a 180. I'm going to change everything about me. I'm going to stop, eventually, I'm going to stop wearing tights. I'm going to go wear jeans. I'm going to stop because Paul could do like shooting star presses, moonsaults.
Mm-hmm.
Paul could do a shooting star press from the top rope and land on his feet. But he was like, nope, not going to do any of that because you've got Will Ospreay now. So I'm just going to go in completely the opposite direction. So in all the matches I had, and when I used to wrestle Paul, and Paul always took kind of the babyface role, he would always be like flipping round, hurricanranas, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think this was like the first time people had seen Paul be a heel and really work that heel style where, again, he wasn't doing any of the high-flying stuff as well. And I think it was quite a refreshing change as well. So, and again, his style was so aggressive, and he would really get the crowd's backs up. Like they really loved booing him, and they really hated him. And he was very good at again pulling on those strings. So again, two guys of that kind of talent, you're not surprised that you got such a great match.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, early Progress days, he was just like you described, the baby face, flying everywhere, doing all these flips and kicks and hurricanranas and all that. And then that's a great point you brought up, how Will Ospreay is clearly, even at this point, is going to be the next big thing. So why compete with that? Just go in a different direction. And I think that different direction, like you said, it was refreshing, and it was very, it fit him because he shaved his head, the black tights, and I guess the jeans later on is very just a hairless gremlin out there. It's very easy to boo.
Yeah, definitely. Great presentation, great character.
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking of characters, we got kind of a transition here. So we got Party Marty Squirrel versus Noam Dar. So I think he's still going by Party Marty, but he's very much the villain here.
Had he put the denim? I think was he wearing a denim jacket? I think, and glasses by this point in the entrance, because I don't think he'd gone fur coat and umbrella at this point.
I think so. In like the image, like the match graphic, he was wearing the jean jacket, but I believe he had the fur jacket.
Started doing the right. So this was kind of that transitioning match, I guess.
Right. I think he even had villain on his tights. So I think it was more of like a almost like a tongue-in-cheek kind of deal, but then like I said, it evolved to be a more serious kind of deal.
Yeah.
But he's facing off against Noam Dar here, who's one of my personal favorites. Noam Dar, he's killing it in NXT UK nowadays. Did you ever get a chance? I'm sure you worked with him a bunch, right?
We never got to wrestle. I never got to wrestle now.
Really?
Unfortunately, we were on a load of shows together. We obviously did TNA Boot Camp together. We were on the same show. We were on the London finals together for TNA Boot Camp. And used to chat a lot and chat about all sorts of things and whatnot. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to get in the ring with Noam, which I really was a bit gutting, because he was one person I always really wanted to work with. Because again, I remember seeing him wrestle in person for the first time was on a show up in Manchester. As a Future Shock show up in Manchester. And it was the first time I'd seen him wrestle, and I was like, "Whoa, this kid is like super talented, like super." And he was still at that point where he was still, young and fresh. And he sort of came up to me afterwards, and he was like, "Oh, have you got anything for me? Like anything you can say about the match and whatnot?" So,
cool.
And we just chatted. We chatted about a few things there. But yeah, he's like one of my regrets of like, I wish I'd had a chance to work this guy, and I never did get a chance because again, and. I don't think in WWE we've seen really as much of Noam as actually he is capable of, and what he's able to do, which is a bit unfortunate. But I still, every now and again, I like going back and watching the I think it's a Monday Night Raw where they came to Scotland,
where he debuted.
It was his Monday night debut, and the pop is just it's off the charts. It's that kind of shivers down your spine kind of pop.
Yeah, I remember that, because at the time I didn't know who he was, so I was like, oh, I guess this guy's a big deal, huh? But now I'm a big fan of NXT UK, and of course, watching back through these Progress shows, like I can see how that build would be that huge pop that it was. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, because obviously being in the Cruiserweight Classic as well,
right,
was awesome. So
yeah,
that was great.
But the story of this match, so again, it's Marty Squirrel versus Noam Dar. So it's the chicken wing versus the Darley chop, which I guess this is what 2014. Is Great Khali still a thing at this point? I don't really remember.
I can't remember, but yeah, it certainly was for Noam. So there was a really unfortunate incident. I don't know if it was after this show or before this show.
Mm-hmm.
On one of the chapters where Noam went for the chop on Paul Robinson and just completely mistimed it, and he caught him, like broke his nose.
Wow.
Might be a chapter following this one.
Well, that would be hilarious if that's like the maybe not hilarious, but like if that's the backstory behind the chop, that it's like shoot devastating. Like, oh, I guess the whole deal.
It may have been the last time he used the chop because of that.
It's just too devastating. This great Khali chop. You know, people were trying to make a joke of it, but
yeah. But like Paul's nose, like he really caught him. Like again, sheer accident, but Paul's nose was like proper like. You know,
wow.
I remember seeing the photo of it. So I was like, oh my god, what happened to him? And everyone was like, yeah, it was the Khali Chop.
Of course,
wow.
It is. Of course it is.
Of course.
I don't think Great Khali ever injured anybody with his chop.
No,
he was the master of it, I guess. Though, so that's pretty much the story here. There's some fun chain wrestling here in the beginning. It's kind of borderline comedic, but that's kind of the two characters are just two entertaining guys. But the intensity kind of ramps up towards the end where they're trading strikes back and forth. They're both trying to hit their finishers, but ultimately Squirrel hits a tornado DDT, rolls right into the chicken wing, but Noam Dar rolls out and hits the Darley chop for the win. So all in all, pretty enjoyable match, I think.
Yeah. Again, you know, two guys, you know, very talented in the ring, knew exactly what they're doing. So again, that the caliber of the talent there, you'd expect them to be able just to, you know, go in and pull out a match of that quality. So yeah, that's it. And obviously the chicken wing just became, you know, really over with the Progress crowd as well. That became such a big thing for them.
Right.
And as much as, you know, and I think that was one of the interesting things of Progress, like as much as they would boo the heels, there were certain things that heels did that they just loved and they were totally into, and obviously the chicken wing was one of them. Yeah,
for sure. And he's just dipping his toes into the villain stuff, so he's really just getting started himself too.
Yeah,
as is Noam. But that leads us to the main event. So we got the Progress Championship on the line. The champion Jimmy Havoc versus Rampage Brown versus Dave Mastiff, triple threat match. So the last chapter, there was a series of triple threat matches that Rampage won one, Dave Mastiff won the other. So now that sets up this match. So you have Jimmy Havoc, this scrawny, slimy heel, trying to defend his title against these two monsters, which that's simple story, and I think they executed this really well. That's probably my main takeaway of this whole show. I mean, yeah, you and Stixx, whatever, you retired, whatever, but they finally got rid of the staff. And they got a goddamn title belt finally. A really good looking one too. So
beautiful. That belt is, you know, was and still is one of the most beautiful titles.
I agree.
So well crafted. I got up close and personal with that belt many times. No, wait, that sounds wrong. No, you know, and again, really, you know, I'm a really big belt fan as well. Like lots of people in wrestling will know this. I'm a really big belt fan. And I think Progress managed to just, you know, personally, like the current WWE have got such a toy quality to them at the moment. Like they look like toys to me, and I'm not a fan. Probably no surprise here. The Winged Eagle, the classic IC title are like my favourites. And I think the Progress belt really struck that balance really well between, you know, looking like a modern wrestling belt, but keeping a lot of old school sensibilities. And it was, you know, absolutely gorgeous belt. So I think there was a big pop as well because I think he had it under his jacket, didn't he? So he he unbuttons his jacket, and because I think that's on YouTube because that's part of the entrance.
Okay. I need to check that out then. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jimmy came out with his coat done up with the belt, so like the crowd didn't know.
Where's the staff?
That's it. They're all like, "Where's the staff?" And then he sort of unbuttons his shirt very slowly and reveals the belt, and you know, big pop from the crowd. So.
Right. Well, now that I know the staff was this big, heavy piece of masonry, like I kind of want the staff back now. Now it's kind of cool. Before I thought it was just like a plastic, like you go to a Halloween store and get like the Scream little axe. That's what I thought it was. Apparently, it was something special, but
no, legit.
But so yeah, now the belt is finally on the line. I guess the story is that Jimmy Havoc destroyed the staff. Commentary mentioned that briefly. I don't know if that was a
yeah. There was a video he put out a promo where there was again, it might still be on YouTube. I'm not sure, but there was you saw him like literally break it in half and set fire to it.
Wow.
Which he actually did, obviously. So it's kind of like, and I think that went out before the show, so kind of the crowd perhaps had the suspicion the belt was coming.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know if you picked this up as well, and you've covered it. It was referred to as a Nazi staff, by the fans. And whilst I think if that hadn't happened, I think Progress would still to this day have the staff. But they were like, I just don't know how long we can keep going. And the crowd are calling it a Nazi staff, and everyone on Twitter's calling it a Nazi staff. We're going to have to bite the bullet and go for a belt. So,
we can't be the Nazi company. That can't be our thing.
I think that's what forced their hand into like, right, sorry, we're getting a belt now. Right, away with the staff, we're having a belt. So.
Right. Well, I enjoy it. I enjoyed the belt for sure. So we got these two big monsters versus Jimmy Havoc for the title. Jimmy Havoc, the smart guy that he is, starts off the match by spitting in both of their faces. So the first few minutes of this match is just Jimmy Havoc just getting decimated by these guys. They take turns body slamming them, who can slam them the hardest, and then they're like, oh, who could give him a Beal the farthest? So they're literally shot putting this guy across the ring. They take it to the outside. He gets whipped. Jimmy Havoc gets whipped into the wall of the balcony so hard. I don't know how he didn't go through it. I don't know what that wall is made of, but man, that was brutal. They set up some chairs. They set up 4 chairs, and they do a double hip toss on Jimmy Havoc through the chairs. And as if that wasn't enough, they set up a table, and Dave Mastiff power bombs Jimmy Havoc off the apron through the table, and that essentially takes out Jimmy Havoc from the match, or at least they think. So, but only one person can win this match. So Rampage and Dave Mastiff finally start fighting each other inside the ring. They trade drop kicks. Dave Mastiff hits a beautiful drop kick. Rampage hits one as well, but he's selling the injury that started the night when he got beat up by Screw Indie Wrestling. They attacked his leg, and so he has tape around his leg. So every time he hits a big high-impact move, he kind of gets up gingerly, which is a detail that I like about this. So they're throwing bombs in there, suplexes, strikes, all that stuff. Mastiff hits a superplex on the Rampage. I'm surprised we didn't see the old Brock Big Show spot there with the ring imploding. But this takes the air out of Mastiff himself, even though he executed the move. So Mastiff rolls out of the ring, and this is Jimmy Havoc's opportunity to get back in, try to pick the bones on Rampage, but only gets a 2 count. So Jimmy Havoc then decides to pull out another table, sets it up in the corner, but as he turns around, gets speared by Rampage into the table, doesn't break it somehow. But the table's still leaning up against the rope, so Rampage just picks him up and power bombs him as hard as he can, and the table breaks. It can only take so much Rampage brutality, that table. Mastiff breaks up the pin though, but then he gets Samoan. Rampage is so strong, good guy. He just picks up Mastiff on his shoulders like it's nothing and just hits a Samoan drop. Mastiff is able to fight back eventually, hits a German onto Rampage into the corner, and then hits his cannonball into the void, I believe he calls it now. Just crushes Rampage. But Havoc is back in, has that belt, that fresh new belt, clocks Mastiff in the back of the head with it. And Rampage, who had just gotten hit with this cannonball, he's literally just a dead carcass on the mat. So Havoc decides to just lock in a knee bar. Rampage isn't selling it because he's knocked out. So the ref has to call it because he can't defend himself. So Jimmy Havoc picks the bones, essentially, gets us the win, and retains the title. I think the story of the match, the two big guys against the smaller champion, I think that was a great thing going into it. And I think it was entertaining throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I think, from what I remember, it was it played into the storyline of regression of they're trying to stack the odds against Jimmy. They don't want Jimmy as the champion, so they're going to stack the odds against him.
Yeah.
And, the best success of him not. And obviously, you put the two of the biggest guys in the company in there, two incredible talents of Rampage and Dave, who just always, and those two always made magic together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've actually watched British Boot Camp. season 2, the TNA British Boot Camp, but they put Rampage and Dave together for that.
Oh yeah.
And it was incredible. It was just, the incredible match those two had. Was really great.
Yeah.
And so, that you knew you were going to get a great match with those two involved.
Mm-hmm.
Rampage, again, another person I'd refer to as a wrestler's wrestler.
Yeah.
Universally respected over here in the British scene.
Mm-hmm.
You literally will not find a wrestler who's got a bad word to say about Rampage, because he's just incredible worker, incredible coach. He looks out for younger wrestlers, and just the ring work is amazing and looks amazing as well. And yeah, so I enjoyed the storyline of that. They were really going to try stack the deck against Jimmy, and even getting things involved like tables, which is kind of Jimmy's wheelhouse. Even that gets taken away from him, and yet he's still able to pull out the victory, which it was the right call, obviously, for where the storyline ended up as well. So three guys who you knew would be really would really put on a great main event. So
for sure.
And I remember because I think by this point I'd kind of emotionally recovered, and this was the match I came back and watched again. I sat in the back watching the main event. So. I remember really enjoying this live. Really enjoying it live.
Yeah, great stuff for sure. But after the match, Will Ospreay comes out, because remember, he's the Thunder Bastard, and he doesn't cash in tonight, but he basically challenges Jimmy Havoc at the next chapter for the Progress title. So, and the crowd's super hot for Ospreay. Big main event, because he's really revving up as far as momentum goes at this point. So. Sets up the main events for the next chapter, and Jimmy Havoc's pretty much sitting there looking at his title, pretty much pondering what's to come in the next few months. But yeah, that's how the show closes. And all in all, Progress chapter 16, great show from start to finish. Obviously, you and Stixx had that emotional story, but you also have this carnage in the main event. You have some lightheartedness and Marty and Noam, and just really good wrestling throughout. So overall, any other thoughts on this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, it was I remember the show closing out, and it was it was a really great experience. And then it kind of, you could see all the seeds they had been planting, and you kind of could see again, they this was the start of like Marty's slow ascension as the villain, and where they go. This would obviously set off, the long running feud between Will and Jimmy, and dropping in the start of the Faceless turning into the Origins, stuff like that. So there was a lot of like things being dropped in and set up here, which would pay off at later chapters as well. So as things like my story had come to its close, I'd come to a close on that. You could see the start of other stories just picking up. And just beginning at the same time as well. So it was, I remember it being a really fun chapter to be part of. And the ballroom always had such a wonderful atmosphere, and there was always like, a real buzz about it going into the day. I mean, and I remember that carrying on even when I came back as a commentator, and doing pre-show, because we used to tape a lot of pre-show things we put out on Facebook Live.
Right.
And we did one from the queue. We were out in the queue and just talking to fans, and it was a much later chapter. It was Jimmy and Will again had to come around, and it would I think the roles had reversed at that point. Will was the heel by that point, and Jimmy was the face, and it was fans bring the weapons, and so we did a live stream on Facebook, going up and down the crowd, looking at all the weapons they brought along.
Right.
They brought to the show as well, and just also using it as a slight filtering process of how dangerous the weapons were, what was going to be used and stuff like that. So yeah, like show days at the ballroom were always really buzzing, really exciting atmosphere. So, and this, I think the show, overall held the high standard that had been set for ballroom shows, and would continue to do so for some time.
Yeah, I hope that atmosphere comes back at some point, because that's an experience that I'd love to be a part of for sure. And I know Progress is in a very different place now. And British wrestling, I guess in general, is in a very different place than it was here in 2014 or wherever the show was. But yeah, I mean, any other like thoughts on your run in Progress overall, the company itself, because it definitely made its mark on wrestling for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really enjoyed my time there. I was grateful for the opportunities I was given, and some of the matches I got to be part of, for all the tag matches. Like I said, a year before this took place, I sat down with John and said, I said to him at the end of 2013, I was like, I think 2014 is going to be my last year. I'd really like to do it in progress. And he was like, okay, cool. Yeah, we'd love to do your final match here. Who do you want to wrestle? And I was like, I shot a couple of names, one of which was Drake Maverick, Spud, because we'd been, friends for a long, long time and wrestled with each other for years and years. So, but he was in TNA at that point. So it was like, he wasn't in the country. So I knew that wasn't going to be a possibility. So I was like, the only other person it could be was Stixx. So I was like, that's the only other person it could be against. So, yeah. And like I said, my only regret is that we didn't perhaps maybe have one more chapter. It would have been great if perhaps we could have started at chapter 12 or something, or fed something in there,
right?
Just to kind of just give it a little bit longer to breathe. I think it would have been great, but it was what it was. And like I said, we as I said earlier, being able to manage to fit it in. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time. I mean, I really loved the garage as well. If you go back to the shows that were at the garage before we moved to the ballroom, the World Cup show as well, I really enjoyed that one. Doing that show was really good fun. The garage had such a great vibe.
Right.
And yeah, I was always treated really well by Progress. I often thank them for being thank you for letting me be part of the history of it. I was really honoured when they said to me, do you want to come back as a commentator? We'd really like we've got Glenn, who's like the play-by-play guy, but we want a wrestler on the comms. We want a wrestler on the commentary team who can talk about stuff and talk about moves and things like that. And so to be asked to do that was a real honour. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time. And like I said, like you said, it's a very different place now. And again, I was very honoured again because when Progress started doing these tapings that you now see going on the WWE Network, and I was once again asked to take up the commentary position, but because of the pandemic and obviously with my regular teaching job, I couldn't make it work, unfortunately. So it's I'll be interested to see where Progress goes next and whether they come back to the live crowds and where those will take place, whether they'll carry on at the theatre they're at. I think it's the Peckham Theatre in London they're at currently. So to see where they go next and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm definitely enjoying going through these earlier chapters, and I'll look forward to listening to you fuck up FSU on commentary over and over again. So I'll be sure to keep an eye out for that.
I'm pretty sure as well. I confuse Mark Haskins and Mark Andrews on multiple occasions. Not and that's really daft because I know both of those guys really well. And I've wrestled both of those guys, but for some reason I just kept saying the wrong one in the wrong match quite a few times. So yeah.
Yeah, I can see that happen. They're very similar beats and names, but
exactly.
But yeah, Singh Kara, thank you for making the time to make the time. Thank you, RJ, for making the time to watch a show and to come on and talk about some Progress Wrestling.
Awesome.
Where can everybody find you and check out what you're doing nowadays?
Yeah, Twitter's kind of the main place for me to follow me. So it's RJ Singh is King on Twitter. Or Instagram as well, if you want to follow me there, which is a mixture of wrestling and also just pictures of my daughter. But that's King RJ Singh, because RJ Singh King was taken on Instagram by someone who doesn't even use the account. I couldn't have the two accounts the same, unfortunately. So I've got, so it's RJ Singh is King on Twitter and King RJ Singh on Instagram. Beautiful. Well, once again, thank you. It was a great time. And if you ever want to hop on again, talk about some of the glory days of Progress, just holler at me. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Once again, thank you so much to RJ Singh for joining me on this episode. Such a good time with RJ. Such a cool dude. So cool to get his insight on not only his monumental match that he had on the show, but on just Progress in general. A lot of the people involved, the little nuances that happen within the chapter. So cool. But yeah, check him out on Twitter at RJ Singh is King. All of his info in the description below. Check him out wherever he's wrestling. He's wrestling all over the goddamn place. So really good guy. Give him a follow. And that's about all Daddy has for you today. Apronbump.com for all of my full episodes. Make sure to check out the video versions of all my episodes on YouTube. Posting clips there as well. Going to start pumping out some kind of short form podcast, mini podcast episodes up there. Some YouTube exclusive stuff coming shortly. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure to subscribe and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of my episodes.
got episode 100 coming up next week. And it's just a good old time. I thought about maybe doing like a I don't know, like a retrospective of my 100 episodes, maybe just having like a I don't know, a Q&A, but decided just to, you know what? Let's just have a good fucking time talking about WrestleMania 18. So that'll be episode 100, a WrestleMania 18 review with none other than Hulk Hogan himself. No, I'm just kidding. With the Get Show podcast. That's right. Not just Charlie, but brought on Charlie, Justin, and Garn from the Get Show podcast. And we review WrestleMania 18 and then do a watch along of Rock versus Hogan. So that is just a silly time. So keep an eye out for that as well. Make sure you don't miss that. And that'll keep you over for the old Thanksgiving time. So, yeah. All right, I'm done babbling. Thank you so much for listening. Love you all. Smooches, smooches, smooches. I'm hard.
Yeah. And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing I guess. Let's get it started. It's the hardest.